अभी जब भी एक नई चीज़ आती है वो पहले तो वो वाइल्ड फायर की तरह स्प्रेड करती है एंड देन उसकी हर किस्म की आउटकम्स जनरेट होती हैं. कुछ लोग अनफॉर्चुनेटली उसके क्रॉस एयर में आएंगे और डीप फेक्स आएंगी और ऑलरेडी हम ये चीज़ होते हुए देख रहे हैं कि इंस्टाग्राम के ऊपर नाउ यू सी कंटेंट दैट्स कमिंग इन दैट यूर और वो इतना रियल है वो कंटेंट दे ट्राइंग टू प्रे ऑन योर इमोशनल साइड. वो बच्चा कोई क्यूट बात कर रहा है ये कर रहा है और आप कमेंट्स में जाते हैं पता लगता है वो सारा का सारा एआई है. So how does one even begin to define ke what is real and what is not? And it's a weird world now when you think about it कि रील्स जो मैं देख रहा हूँ वो हैं भी रियल या मुझे बस हैक किया जा रहा है कि मेरे इमोशंस को हैक किया जा रहा है, मेरी फीलिंग्स को हैक किया जा रहा है. एंड अगेन माय वाइफ वाज टॉकिंग टू मी अबाउट दिस कि AI इज गेटिंग रियली स्केरी एंड मेरी थॉट उसमें ये थी कि इट्स ओनली अ मैटर ऑफ टाइम नाउ जब सर्टन रेगुलेशंस आएंगी और वो जो कहीं ना कहीं आपको मेटा डेटा लेवल के ऊपर प्लेटफॉर्म्स को लॉक इन करना पड़ेगा कि यार जो भी कंटेंट अपलोड हो रहा है उसका कोई ना कोई सिग्नेचर होना चाहिए और उस सिग्नेचर की बेसिस के ऊपर हम अलाउ करेंगे या डिसअलाउ करेंगे. एंड देन सिमिलरली द फ्यूचर ऑफ क्योंकि कॉपीराइट्स हैज़ गॉन आउट द विंडो, डीप फेक्स आर जस्ट कम्प्लीटली डिस्ट्रॉइंग ऑल फॉर्म्स ऑफ ऑथेंटिसिटी एंड वहाँ पर नाउ यू नीड एक्चुअल टेक्नोलॉजी टू बी एबल टू सॉल्व दीज प्रॉब्लम, राइट. ऑथेंटिसिटी भी हो सके, मैं अगर कुछ बना रहा हूँ और उसको फिर कोई यूज़ करके कुछ और बना रहा है और उसको यूज़ करके कुछ और बना रहा है तो कहीं ना कहीं मेरी ओनरशिप ट्रैक हो सके ताकि मुझे उसकी रॉयल्टी कहीं ना कहीं से मिल सके. एंड सो इट्स जो मेरा मसला था वो ये था कि इस वक्त जो आप कह रहे हैं कि इतना अर्ली हैं हम कि इट साउंड्स लाइक इंसैनिटी कि यार देखो मेरा NFT बेस्ड आर्ट वर्क है. बट अगर मैं इसको 10 साल आगे ले जाऊँ और मैं कहूँ कि एक दुनिया आ गई है जिसमें रेगुलेट हो चुका है सब कुछ और उसमें प्लेटफॉर्म क्या डिवाइस लेवल के ऊपर लेट्स से सैमसंग का फ़ोन है या XYZ जो भी चीज़ है उसी लेवल के ऊपर जो भी क्रिएट हो रहा है और जो भी रिसीव हो रहा है वो सारा का सारा इधर NFT बैक्ड है वरना वो उधर ही रिजेक्ट कर रहा है. वो कह रहा है कि वट एवर यू क्रिएटेड. तो वो फिर बहुत ईजिली इकोसिस्टम ऐसा होगा जिसके अंदर इट विल बी अ नो ब्रेनर कि यार हाँ मैंने वो टेक्नोलॉजी इंटीग्रेट कर लिया. सो आई थिंक वॉट यू आर बेसिकली डूइंग इज बिल्डिंग द रेल्स for the future, for the post AI world, जिसमें eventually वो outcome होना ही होना है. It's just that whoever gets there first is able to then deploy that technology. I would be curious though because this is so far out कि जिस तरह आपने कहा ना कि आपके उस वक्त इन्वेस्टर्स कह रहे थे कि what, like just focus on this one problem and then solve that and then maybe think about later. You chose a very difficult approach because when you stack it all up, I'm sure अभी जो audience भी सुन रही है वो भी काफ़ी चीज़ों में confused होगी कि यार I was following you till AI, but then now there is an avatar and then there is also intelligence, but then it's backed by NFTs and on chain and so it's a handful of it's तो उसका और आप 6 साल हो गए हैं आपने कहा मैं अभी स्टेल्थ मोड में हूँ और अब हम नया फ्रेश निकल रहे हैं एंड जस्ट अभी ये मलेशियन गवर्नमेंट वाली चीज़ लॉन्च हो रही है. सो आई एम क्यूरियस कि टेल मी अ बिट अबाउट द स्केल दैट यूर एट द प्रोडक्ट. क्या भी ये क्या एक रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट साइड पे ही सारा कुछ हो रहा है और उसमें आप रिसर्च करते करते सर्टन यूज़ केसेस इम्प्लीमेंट कर रहे हैं या कोई ऐसी प्रोडक्ट है जो मार्केट में है लाइक what is the business aspect of this right now?
No, makes sense. So the challenge when you have and excellent questions and framing just to make it simpler for the audience. Now, just at the end of the day, the easiest way of thinking about this is just look at the human being, right? And if you think about the human being, they have a body and they have a mind, right? Mind is slightly. Chalo, let me just call it a brain for now, right? Not a mind, but a body, mind, and if you go in the spiritual, metaphysical aspect, you can say that there is also a soul, right? And so if you want to build real interactive characters that make sense, you cannot just build the brain of that character, which is the text, right? You need the body as well. And the body right now exists primarily on the visual screen, right? That's the avatar's body. Like we created AI Muzamil, it's a bunch of pixels, right? That's the body. Otherwise, it's just the intelligence is a chatbot, right? Jo soul hai, this part is very important. The soul, right? And I'll use a metaphor or Islamic metaphor. Like it's unique and scarce to that individual. And so this part is your fingerprint in the universe, right? It's your fingerprint and it's your unique soul that is in your body. And when you die, your body is still there, but your soul has gone to a different place, right? But there are, for example, like the opportunity with Nadi the tiger in Malaysia, right? Like it's not, there's no soul there. There's no blockchain based asset. But Nadi the tiger can be a great platform if you chat with it. It can, as a government citizen agent, provide you as a user a digital wallet where the government might give you one day subsidies directly into your blockchain wallet. You understand what I'm saying?
Right,
so what's coming
right,
is
right,
like
right,
this
right.
permissionless infrastructure where you chat with an AI avatar and it helps you unpack and unlock and it gives you a token or it gives you a subsidy directly, right? Based on your signature and footprint. By the way, this core technology of NFTs is still extremely valuable. If you look at OpenAI, Sam Altman's other company called WorldCoin, that's exactly what they're doing when they scan your iris and your orb. They're saving that technologically, that picture of your iris on a uniquely, verifiably scarce NFT asset. So that technology stays. The technology stays. It's just the hype cycle around it goes up and down. And one cannot judge the core technology based on how much retail hyper awareness there is. Sorry, it's such a... hopefully
No, that
that
makes
gives
sense.
your
So
audience a
what
bit
I
of
wanna-
nuance on it.
What I want to do is I want to jump 10 years from now. I want to jump to 2035, right? And so there's a lot of that happening these days of people imagining a world 10 years from now. There's a lot of doomers. There's a lot of people saying, "Ki, we're about to usher into a new era of
Yes.
human civilization."
Qayamat.
I think whatever side of the aisle you're on in terms of the retail side of AI, I think there's a unanimous agreement that we're really at the cusp of a fifth industrial revolution, and I think it's a terrifying and exciting time to be alive, because the next 5 years, in my personal opinion, if we do look at the geopolitics and the geoeconomics of the world, are going to completely upend our understanding of how the world works, right? So I'm 35, you're a few years older than I am. And so growing up, there was a certain framework of, America is the world superpower, West is like this, East is like this, there are certain Asian tigers, there are certain emerging economies, there's a certain way that the world works. A lot of that is now changing, and a lot of that has already started to come out in the last couple of years with tariffs, with fracturing of globalization, and the narrative has completely sort of flipped. AI just sort of adds, like, that just throws everything out, and it's अब वो लोग ये बात कर रहे हैं कि if intelligence no longer requires human interaction, then how do you define meaning to life when all you've done over the last 50 years in a capitalist world was drive your meaning from work, right? So you would grow up, and as an adult, you would find some sort of work that would pay you money. That money would be what you would use to do whatever you want. But now we're going towards a time where, as you mentioned, either there is a Chinese world, or there's an American world. There are few companies that own the compute, that own the intelligence, and so they rapidly scale. There is like $1 trillion तो मजाक बनना शुरू हो गया है. अभी वो Elon Musk का recently वो shareholder meeting में हुआ है कि जी, will be the first trillionaire if everything works out. और जो चीज़ें होती हुई नज़र आ रही हैं कि with AGI वो आ जाएगी, तो उसकी वजह से जी प्रोडक्टिविटी ऐसे चली जाएगी, सुनने में बड़ी अच्छी लग रही हैं, बट उसकी रियल वर्ल्ड सर्टन इम्प्लीकेशंस हैं कि अगर a small set of people can create all of this value, then what happens to the rest of us, right? The middlemen and all the people who are expected to lose their jobs and so on and so forth. And so that's going to change the way that the financial systems work. That's going to change the way that we even understand life as a whole. Pehla to I would love to know your opinion of 10 years from now. How do you see the world? Because you're right in the center of a lot of these changes, right? क्योंकि जो ये blockchain and ये सारा ये डिजिटाइजेशन ऑफ द फाइनेंशियल वर्ल्ड की तरफ भी लेके जा रहा है, चाहे वो CBDCs हो जाए, ये हो जाए, वो हो जाए, बट वो इन अ लॉट ऑफ वेज वो जो फाइनेंशियल न्यू वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर है उसके अंदर उसकी वो इसके बैकबोन पे खड़ा हुआ है. देन यू हैव द इंटेलिजेंस जो कि अगेन कंप्लीटली रीडिफाइन होने वाली है, और उसकी वजह से लॉट ऑफ पीपल आर वेरी कंफ्यूज एज वेल. मुझे जो मसला होता है वो ये होता है कि it sounds fine कि there's this a company that can create a set of robots that will be in all of your houses and will be driving all of the work. बहुत अच्छी बात है, but if everybody is jobless, who's going to pay for this, right? Like, what does that world look like? Are we going towards a universal basic income? Are we actually capitalism grew and eventually paved way for the ultimate communist society?
Yeah.
या और मैं जनरली मैं इस साइड पे ज़्यादा आता हूँ कि इंसान जो है ना वो जनरली, और ख़ासकर ऐसा इंसान हमारी जनरेशन्स जो हैं जिनका पूरा काम धंधा ये था कि यार फारिग बैठते हैं तो कहते हैं यार व्हाट वैल्यू आर वी प्रोड्यूसिंग, हाउ आर वी मेकिंग मनी, वो कहीं ना कहीं तरीका ढूंढ लेगा पैसे कमाने का. और मोस्ट लाइकली बस फ़र्क ये होगा कि जो कोर वैल्यू है फार्मिंग की, कंस्ट्रक्शन की, इसकी उसकी, वो आहिस्ता आहिस्ता एग्रीगेट होती होती बहुत थोड़े लोगों के पास चली जाएगी जो कि क्रिएट कर रहे होंगे, और वही ऑटोमेशन के थ्रू और उसके थ्रू ऑप्टिमाइज करके उसके अंदर बहुत वैल्यू और यील्ड प्रोड्यूस कर रहे होंगे. एंड देन अ लार्ज चंक ऑफ द रेस्ट ऑफ ह्यूमैनिटी विल जस्ट बी मेकिंग मनी और ट्रांसफरिंग वैल्यू थ्रू फलसफा, राइट? सो और इसकी मैं मिसाल इस तरह देता हूँ हमेशा लोगों को. मैं ना बहुत इस चीज़ का कायल होता था कि यार वैल्यू होती है, आप वैल्यू प्रोड्यूस करते हो, उससे वेल्थ जनरेट होती है, उसको डिस्ट्रीब्यूट आप करते हो तो एक इकोनॉमी चलती है. अच्छा, मेरे पास देयर वाज अ कुक यूज्ड टू वर्क फॉर मी, और वो जो है ना वो आता, बड़ा अच्छा खाना बनाता था, बड़ा अच्छा काम करता था. वो आता था आके 5-8 मिनट के अंदर ठक 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 सारा काम करता था, और ही वुड ऑलवेज हैव लाइक अ हेडसेट अटैच टू हिज ईयर और वुड बी ऑलवेज ऑन हिज फोन. मैंने कभी ज़्यादा सोचा नहीं, मैं अपने काम शाम में लगा होता था, वो काम अच्छा कर लेता था, व्हाटएवर. एक दफ़ा जो है क्या हुआ कि मुझे ना कॉल आई इंडिया से. मैं बड़ा कंफ्यूज, मैंने कॉल उठाई तो पता ही लगा उसने, वो खातून थी, उन्होंने बोला जी नवाज़ जो है वो आपके साथ हैं, वो किधर हैं, मिल नहीं रहे मिले. मैंने कहा पता नहीं ये कोई चक्कर चलाया हुआ इसने मोबाइल फ़ोन का, क्या चल रहा है ना. पता ये लगा, लॉन्ग स्टोरी शॉर्ट, कि वो जो खातून थी वो इसकी बिजनेस पार्टनर थी, और धंधा इसका ये था कि ये जितने पैसे मेरे से ले रहा था उसके 2 या 3 गुना ये कमाता था बाय रनिंग अ सेकेंडरी मार्केट ऑफ लूडो स्टार टोकन्स. अच्छा, मैंने उससे बैठ के मैंने कहा ये बच्चे समझाओ कर क्या रहे हो. कहते हैं खैर मैं ये रहा हूँ कि लूडो स्टार, ये कोविड के बाद लूडो स्टार वाज दिस गेम, लूडो जो होती है वो एक गेम थी जो कि पॉपुलर हुई भी थी. यू वुड प्ले दैट गेम एंड एज यू विन यूड गेट टोकन्स, एंड विद दोज टोकन्स यू कुड डू अ बंच ऑफ थिंग्स, but you could also transfer those tokens to your friends or a username. So Nawaz was actually running an entire ring of literally like a stock market of जिसमें वो constantly phone पे था, कहता था जी अच्छा 5,000 tokens हैं, कामरान 92 दे रहा है, bidding starts at 50, 50, 55, 55, 60, 60, 65, और वो रन टाइम पे लोग उसको खरीदते थे टोकन, वो इजी पैसा से ट्रांसफ़र करते थे. And he was balling, like he was making like 100,000 rupees a month by literally running a secondary market of Ludo freaking Star. और मुझे उससे रियलाइज हुआ, मैंने कहा यार अगर आपकी प्रोडक्टिविटी सारी थोड़े से लोग मैनेज भी कर लें, ह्यूमैनिटी विल फाइंड अ वे टू एक्सचेंज वैल्यू, चाहे वो किसी और तरीके से हो. एंड देन आई स्टार्टेड सीइंग ऑल ऑफ दिस AR VR स्टफ कमिंग इन, एंड सो बहुत लंबा मैंने कर दिया, बट मुझे एक दुनिया ये नज़र आ रही है कि आज से 10 साल बाद a lot of, वो जो रेडी प्लेयर 1 वाली दुनिया है ना, जहाँ पर a lot of people will be plugged into a virtual world, and in that virtual world the likeness and the NFT backed character will be very useful, where the economy will look fundamentally different because there will be very few companies that are just creating whatever you need in the real world, but then there is an entire virtual world now where value is being created and value is being transferred and exchanged, and that's where the money then gets distributed, which can then be used to go back into the real world, and then something can be done on top of that. And to be honest, I can't even, mera mind cannot even comprehend what that economy will look like, but I genuinely feel like that's where we're going, and I genuinely feel like what you're building is a step in that direction, where that's where this will be incredibly useful eventually. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I think the framework that you are viewing the future with is similar to my own assessments. As the only difference is I have a bit more pessimism about it. If I can be honest, I'll tell you why. And it's so interesting, the story about your chef who was cooking for you, but at the same time running this entire side hustle. The level of Pakistani jugaad always impresses me. And I'm reminded of a quote of Lee Kuan Yew, actually, the a leader of Singapore and someone who really built the nation up. He said this quote: "I check, I double check, and then I check again." So with Pakistan or with any team members or anything that you're doing, sometimes I think like you have to regularly sink in. But I'm glad you checked with him as to how he's running this jugaad. How is he making 1 lakh while he's being a chef for you? So that's phenomenal. I think for me, like the part about the future that is a bit tricky is I sort of look at the history for some patterns, and this is where I'll give you like 3 forces that I think will that give me a framework on how to think about this, but I don't have any answers. So one core force is like just geopolitical rivalry, right? Like that axis of attack, that vector is a very important consideration in this national AI battle that's happening, because you will have competing visions and you will have competing outputs. So how that plays out on the global scale, who controls the chips, who controls the source of energy, who controls the dominant language model that operates in the world, will control culture. So these are actually national security issues that are being played out right now, but we just see as a consumer or as a retailer what is a consumer experience. But these, make no mistake, these are national surveillance systems that are being developed, honed, fine-tuned, sharpened, and then subsequently will deliver services. But under which paradigm? Is it a paradigm of hypocritical, open, like if you go and ask ChatGPT, I remember this was like during the Ukraine war, zamana tha ke you couldn't get specific information that was aligned with the thinking of that time, and so the chat or whatever language model will censor it and give you like the sanitized version. So this is cultural control, like this subtle thing, and you don't see this level of control. So that entire geopolitical vector is so critical to this discussion, because if that tension is not resolved, or if a multipolar world doesn't emerge in the way that it needs to emerge, there's always talk about it, but really it's not a multipolar world. It's a single English-dominated, American-dominated empire. That's what we have to be mindful of, because that's the operating system and paradigm for the entire world order, because the trade gets settled in the US dollar, in the US currency, and the effect of the dollar, the gravitational pull of this is so large. And it's not a privilege. Like, people think that we've gotten out of colonialism, but if you look very recently at just recent history, how many African countries who claim to be independent can manage their own currency through their own central bank? Or do they still have to go to their colonial masters to ask, to their former colonial masters, to ask for permission? How many assets and resources are allocated to their former colonial masters that they cannot give to their people? This entire structure of what's happening today, I'm not talking about like these countries having AI or any, just that permission, as a marker.
Permission to ek baat hai. Africa mein there are countries that go to the French central bank to print their money. Yes. So they can't even print their own currencies at home. They actually get them through France.
They have a better chance of launching their own meme coin, right? So they're not going to be able to survive. If you don't have independent control of your currency, you're not going to be able to play an infrastructure game where you can develop your people's capacities and capability. That's number one, if you don't have that independence. And there have been countries, and Malaysia and Singapore are amazing examples. Look at history as an indicator for how power around these core technologies will evolve. And these two technologies specifically, AI and blockchain, not crypto, just the underlying core technology. These two technologies are going to play a role in national security. They're going to have a geopolitical impact. The second vector that I am really excited about, which is why I live every day with deep excitement. I wake up, I want to go to work, I want to develop, I want to build cool things, is look at the example of solar in Pakistan and the implementation of solar energy. And there's like this cool graphic that there's a very good author, I don't know whether you follow him, Azim Azhar. He writes an amazing Substack, and so he analyzes these trends, and I recommend your viewers also look at his wonderful Substack. So there's a really cool graphic that he showed from Google Maps of the imagery of Pakistan's, like I think it was Lahore or Islamabad. He had taken an image before and after over a period of time, once the Chinese solar panels prices started to crash, and the difference of solar in a decentralized way, able to generate energy from the sun to power homes, reduce electricity bills, provide basic services to people in countries where infrastructure challenges exist, right? So the retail user becomes extremely, I'm talking about the normal man on the street, becomes empowered to take almost his destiny into his own hands. And so I call this force or this vector decentralization, or like just relying on your own individual one sort of unit where that person has so much tremendous power because the technology infrastructure is there, right? So if you have this decentralization vector and then you combine the historical vector, now you have two sort of vectors that are both occurring at the same time. So I'd have no idea how these two attack and how these two get shaped, but these two forces will play a very significant role. But the third question that you asked is, I think that's the most important one, the most important vector, which is the vector of meaning. Like what will give meaningful output or work to people in a world which we are imagining right now as post-work, or whether it is a post-abundant societies now. And this meaningful work part is where, again, I'm excited about Pakistan, because the opportunity or ability for us to be able to create art, like Pakistan doesn't have Bollywood, right? Like, I mean, it has a version of it, right? But if you look at the infrastructure that Bollywood needed to get to Bollywood levels, there's an entire infrastructure of actors, infrastructure of sets, equipment, all of that entire flow that occurs. Now, when you look at AI and a democratization tool and decentralization and these vectors, you have now looked at a technology like generative AI in the context of somebody with a phone or somebody with the access to compute or resources with that hardware device is now possibly in a couple of years able to create a full life movie without needing that infrastructural support, right, to build that out. And that power is where meaning comes in. Meaning making at scale is going to transform. So the ability to share stories, create new intermingle, mixed Legos, composable stories is going to transform in the next couple of years. So meaning making, meaning deriving, sharing stories, sharing culture, all of this is going to go through a transformative lens, just primarily dependent on which language model or which generative video model we use. And that's where the state actors and that's where the geopolitical forces come in. So these three vectors for me, like one is really deeply like spiritual, philosophical meaning making, right? The second vector and the third vector of geopolitical forces, and the second vector of decentralization. Like if we really take this into account, you can then get a sense of frame of mind that this is inherently too complex to predict. And what I can see is just like, it's going to be chaotic, it's going to be exciting, it's just going to be like the world was for the past 50 years, but maybe on a much more exponential level in scale. And that's where the opportunity is. Can we as individuals build ourselves up, realizing that, hey, this technology is open source. The code is on GitHub. I'm a Pakistani developer sitting in Lahore or Islamabad. What can I do to learn right now from the free version of DeepSeek? Can I put this code there? Can I launch something? Can I create my own code? Nobody's asking Pakistan or anyone else to create their own nationalized models, although that's a capacity or capability they can develop if they want to. But just creating meaningful applications is going to be interesting now. So I give you my framework. It's aligned with yours. The only concern I have is like just this, there is an endless war for resources happening right now. And people are not aware of the significance of some of these geopolitical moves being made, whether China decides to kick NVIDIA out and wants to nationalize its supply chain and its chips. All of this will have second, third, fourth order consequences on us as to what model we use down the line, right, as a user. So for me, as just one business, unique you can say quasi stealth startup. We go up, we launch products, then we go back down into the surface to try and find gold and then bring it back up to the community. Where we are right now is like we're at the intersection of these forces. And what we're trying to do is create a sustainable structure that taps into all three. Can we get our users to create meaning and have fun and have a meaningful experience like the way AI Muzamil is? Can we allow them to tap into the power of decentralization, create economic resources and value, right? And then there's this geopolitical force. So that's how we're thinking a little bit about what the next 10 years could look like. That's how I'm thinking about it. Like that's the framework that I have is oriented around that. I don't have an easy answer except that it's going to be extremely exciting. We may or may not enter a post-work society. It may just be a lot more work. There's a very interesting research study or paper that has come out as well that AI is making us work a lot harder than before because we're now used to like, there's this sense of like productive, there's this paranoia about I'm not being as productive because 24/7 I should be prompting this machine that's giving me these golden nuggets, whereas everyone else is doing it. Like, why am I falling behind? Do I understand the difference between cloud skills versus chat GPT, GPTs? Do I know all of these like intricacies? So you're always like this, you're playing catch up. And so the AI race has made all of us run faster as retail users as well, or as businesses trying to build on this now. And so that's where in our hiring sort of DNA, we're always looking at people who can push the edge, push the limit, push the frontier, or they come to us with like, we're really looking for people who have that ability or skill set because we didn't have it when we first launched the software house in Pakistan, almost now 3+ years ago, right? So when we built that out, like the technology stack for generative AI or AI talent was very tricky to find. You would find Python developers or JavaScript experts, but if you were to look for somebody who has coded LLMs or has prompted LLMs rather and has worked interactively with them or has fine-tuned them, it would be almost impossible to find. But today in Pakistan, because the technology is open source, you've had this upskilling. So that's also a very, very interesting vector as we think a little bit more about expanding our footprint here and hiring more of these wonderful, talented people through the world's first AI recruiter for Pakistan, Muzamil.
आप देख रहे थे TBT clips from the podcast made for the smartest Pakistanis, the Thought Behind Things podcast. इस तरह के मजीद clips देखने के लिए चैनल को सब्सक्राइब जरूर कर लीजिएगा and I will see you in the next video.